Snow drifted sideways across the compound like ash from a dying world, and Sergeant Leon Fisher pressed his forehead against a strip of frozen wire, too weak to stand but too stubborn to fall. He wasn't supposed to be alive anymore. Not after 3 winters, 2 transfers, and a starvation diet measured in grams. The guards had a word for prisoners like him: shadow men. Bodies still breathing, futures already gone. Then, one night, a flicker of movement in the tree-line broke the pattern of despair. Not a guard, not a wolf. A girl, thin, wrapped in a tattered coat, no armband, no escort. She looked no older than 20. She shouldn't have been there. Civilians risked execution for approaching a camp fence. Yet she walked closer, slowly, as if she had done this before. Leon's first thought wasn't wonder. It was disbelief. Humans didn't come toward the wire. They only ever went away from it. She knelt. From her pocket came a bundle wrapped in cloth. Bread. Real bread. Not sawdust loaf. Not ration scrap. Bread with weight, warmth, hope. She slid it through a gap in the fencing. Then, before Leon could speak a word, she pressed a finger to her lips and vanished back into the dark. He never learned her full name. Records later identify her only by a single letter. E. No birthplace. No photograph. No burial. And yet, over the coming weeks, she would risk everything, again and again, to return. But the night the camp shut down, she disappeared forever. Was she taken? Was she running? Or was she someone the war was never meant to record at all? Because some people die once and some disappear twice. By late 1944, the camp existed in a strange twilight between life and collapse. The Reich was shrinking, yet its cruelty grew sharper, more frantic, like a wounded animal still capable of killing. Men didn't talk about after the war anymore. The future had been replaced by a single measurement. How many mornings can I endure? Leon Fisher arrived during the first snow of November, marched in with a transport column that looked less like prisoners and more like walking corpses propped upright by habit. He had once been a sergeant in an armored reconnaissance unit. Fast, sharp, unbreakable. Now his belt could be folded around his waist twice. His boots were too large because his feet had shrunk. He carried no expectation of rescue, only the thin instinct that told his body to keep moving. The first thing he noticed wasn't the barracks or the watchtowers. It was the fence. 2 rows of barbed wire, crude and rusted, inward curved like claws. The wire wasn't merely a border, it was a message. It said, everything beyond this line is no longer yours. Your past, your name, your dignity, gone. Inside the camp, the world had been stripped to categories. The starving, the dying, and the ones pretending they wouldn't soon join them. There was no noise except orders and coughing. The guards rarely spoke. Cruelty didn't require words. Even laughter had disappeared. Prisoners forgot the sound of it. The ration bucket came at dawn and again after nightfall. Thin soup, 2 spoonfuls of something that might once have been potato, and black bread closer to chalk than flour. Men learned to eat slow, not to savor, but to delay the moment when the hunger returned. During those first days, Leon trained himself to become invisible. If you drew notice, you were punished. If you slowed, you were beaten. If you collapsed, no one dragged you back up. Survival depended on silence. But silence had its own cruelty. It made you think. And thinking made you remember. And memory was a form of torture. It might have stayed that way until death, just one more soldier swallowed by the machinery of war. If not for the night, the first bundle appeared. It was near the fence behind the tool shed, where the ground dipped low enough that patrolling guards rarely bothered to sweep their lamps. Leon had gone there to breathe, not out of hope, but out of instinct. That was when he saw a small knot wrapped in rough cloth lying half buried in the frost. Not placed carelessly, positioned with intention, like a secret waiting for the right hands. Inside, a heel of real bread. Dense, warm, human. For a second, Leon thought it had to be a trap, some sadistic trick to provoke theft and then beatings. But there was no patrol lying in wait, no guards smirking from the shadows, just darkness and breath fogging in the moonlight. He devoured half before his brain caught up with the thought. Someone put this here on purpose. That was when the fear came, not fear of death, but of hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope made you visible. The next night, the bundle returned, this time tucked beneath a broken plank. Inside, a sliver of cheese. Impossible. Someone out there was risking execution to smuggle food into a place the world had already decided wasn't worth saving. The third night, he wasn't alone when he found it. A skeletal prisoner with sunken cheeks and bone-thin wrists reached for the bundle first. Leon didn't fight him. Hunger had erased the concept of possession. But minutes later, as the man ate, his body convulsed. Meat too rich for a stomach too empty. He was dead by morning. This is when Leon understood. Kindness came with cost. Even mercy had a blade. Still, the bundles continued. Not always food. Once a scrap of wool. Once, a single page torn from a children's reader in Polish. Vowels large and looping like it belonged to another universe. Another time, a small dried apple, shriveled but sweet, almost sacred. Someone out there knew he was alive. And more terrifying still, someone cared. It was on the fifth night that he finally saw her, a slim figure lingering between trees, still as snow melt, hood drawn low. She waited until the guard's lantern passed, then stepped forward, pressing another bundle through the wire before vanishing back into darkness, like a ghost retracing her own footsteps. No name, no voice, just a pair of eyes, frightened but unshaken. Leon didn't sleep that night, not from hunger, but from the return of something he had nearly forgotten existed, awareness of another heartbeat. He told no one. To speak of her was to end her. Ironically, the fence that trapped him also shielded her. The guards looked outward for enemies, not toward the prisoners. They never imagined rescue could come from the Treeline, from a civilian girl with no uniform, no weapon, no army, just defiance. But the question sharpened in his mind. Why would she risk everything for a stranger she didn't know? Accident? No. Once his chance. Twice his intent. 5 times his loyalty. Or something deeper. Still, danger stalked every corner of this contact. If a patrol dog scented her trail, if a sentry saw movement, if any prisoner spoke aloud and word spread, she wouldn't be detained. She would simply vanish. Leon didn't yet know her name, but already her presence had changed something fundamental in him. The knowledge that goodness still moved in the world, even in a place designed to grind it out of existence. Which raised a haunting possibility. What if she wasn't saving him? What if she was saving herself, clinging to one last fragment of humanity in a world built to crush it? And if she was willing to risk death for compassion? How far would she go when the war tightened its grip? Because the wire was no longer just a barrier. It was a meeting point, a secret, and secrets do not survive long in camps like these. The first rule of survival had been silence. Now, the first crack in silence had begun. And when silence cracks, the world notices. They met without speaking. They met without touching. They met because darkness gives cover to the kinds of courage daylight punishes. She always arrived the same way, from the birch line beyond the creek, where moonlight cut silver ladders through the branches. A pause, a long listen, a check of the wind, so scent wouldn't travel. Then the whisper of careful steps over frozen leaves. Leon learned her rhythm the way a sailor learns tides. He knew when to be there, how long to wait, when to melt back into shadow. In a place where minutes stretched like wire, timing was everything. The sixth night brought the first message. Not a letter. Letters could be seized, decoded, punished. Instead, she left a scrap cut from a flour sack, stitched with rough thread into a symbol. A circle with a notch. He didn't know what it meant, but it meant something. Communication without words. Proof that he wasn't imagining her. Proof of intention. He answered with the only thing he had, order. He began sweeping the snow away from the fence line to leave a clean strip she could see from the trees, a landing zone. If guards questioned it, he could call a habit. Soldiers like him always cleared paths. But both of them knew what it was now, a quiet handshake across steel. What did she look like? Leon tried not to fix it in his mind, in case memory made her more precious than safety allowed. But details slid through anyway. A mouth that twitched when she listened. A scarf with a snagged end, like it had been caught on a nail. Nails were everywhere in a country pulled apart to feed armies. And her hands, quick, capable, not dainty. The kind of hands that knew fields and hard winters and fear and did the brave thing anyway. Was she a partisan runner? Records later suggest many village girls did this work. Not because someone taught them espionage, but because hunger taught them grief. When a family member disappears into a camp, some people build walls in their hearts. Others, fewer, cut holes in real ones. The seventh night, she brought something different, information. No paper, no writing, just the placement of objects. An apple set on the left side of the plank. A stone little more than a pebble, centered, the bundle on the right. It felt like a code, made of positions, a compass pointing to a truth Leon couldn't yet read. Why not speak? Because sound travels. Sound betrays. And because words make things real. If the wire ever stole their secret, Leon wanted no phrase that could be recited in a tribunal. And then, for the first time, a voice, not hers. A patrol in the distance, laughing too loudly, the drunk kind of dangerous. Leon flattened himself against the barracks while the beam of a lantern stuttered across the fence. He thought he saw her crouch behind a stump, fingers white against bark. The light passed. She didn't move for a long time. Only when the cold had numbed his sense of fear did she rise and glide backward into the black. The next day, work details changed. New guards, harder faces. Someone had been caught bribing a cook. The punishment was described without drama. Discipline detail. The result was a wooden cart with a sheet over it. That night, she came late. No vanded. Only her hands on the wire, palms flat, as if feeling the current of his breath. She shook her head once, a warning. Then she pointed slowly to the south. Leon understood. Watch the road. Something was coming. He wasn't a romantic by nature. War bleaches that quality out of you. But even he could sense how quickly dependence had grown inside him. Not for food now, but for the idea that someone beyond the wire recognized his existence. It is a strange line to cross, from wanting to survive for yourself to wanting to survive for someone else's belief that you are worth it. Who was she to him? Not a savior, not an angel. Those words are too clean for mud and blood. She was something rarer, a person who had chosen to hold onto her humanity with both hands, and then share a handful with a stranger. And who was he to her? A symbol? A test? A promise that the world she wanted to return to still contained men who could look at kindness without using it? At times, Leon wondered if she had lost a brother or a fiancé to some other barracks, some other fence, and was paying forward a debt she could never settle. Other moments, he suspected a different calculus, that she was embedded in a courier chain delivering more than food, messages. The circle with notch, the directional placements, the deliberate late arrival. What if he was part of a larger route, a link in a line she drew through enemy territory, using him as a constant so she could measure the shifting risk? And then, one night, a whisper, barely there, not in Polish, not at first, in a careful German that carried the sound of someone who had learned it to survive. Nicht heute. Not tonight. It wasn't a refusal. It was a plan. She pressed her finger once to the wire. Wait. Then the tiniest sound like cloth tearing. She slid something between the strands. A thin strip of blue ribbon. It was new. New meant rare. Rare meant important. She pointed to it, then to the trees. The message seemed to be, when you see this again, it's safe. Safe for what? For a bigger drop? For a message? For escape? The word pulsed through Leon's skull until his temples ached. He had never planned to run. Running was for men with legs that obeyed. Running was for men who hadn't seen what guards did to fugitives they recaptured. Yet the ribbon said a door might open if he was willing to fling himself through it. The following week, the camp changed again. Trucks came at odd hours. Guards smoked more, watched less, argued behind the latrines. The winter sky felt lower, as if the clouds themselves were tired of what they were made to witness. Leon heard names of places spoken like curses. Ardennes, Vistula, Budapest. He clung to the fence line each dusk, waiting for the blue he'd been promised. rehearsing in his mind the muscles he would need to wake from their sleep. Ankles, knees, lungs. But the ribbon did not return. Instead, a note of raw danger entered her outline. She moved faster, bowed lower, never remained in the open for more than a heartbeat. Twice she retreated mid-approach, swallowed by birch trunks before he could even fix her in memory. Once she flung the bundle from so far out that it struck the wire, snagged, and dropped short. Leon waited until dawn to yank it through when the patrols thinned. Inside, a few sugar cubes and a button torn free, so violently the thread still held a curl of fabric. Someone had grabbed her. She had gotten away. The next time they met, she did something that almost undid him. She laughed. Just a breath, a tiny cloud of white, quick and incredulous. The sound a child makes when a dare works. She set the bundle down, then tapped the wire twice, gratitude. He mirrored it. For a moment, the fence felt like a table between old friends. He broke the rule and spoke. One word. Name. He knew it was foolish. He knew it gave too much. But questions are a reflex. We ask because we fear what we don't know. Her answer was instant, a soft yeah. No. Then, softer, he. She drew it in the frost with a gloved fingertip and wiped it away as soon as it existed. An initial is a door that stays locked, yet smells like home. Leon spent the next day cataloging the letter in his head, testing names against it like keys against a lock. Elżbieta, Eva, Ella. There are so many E's in Poland, you could build a city out of them. None felt certain. Perhaps that was the point. Perhaps certainty was the danger she refused to indulge. That night, the symbol returned, circle with notch, pinned beneath the stone. Leon understood now, not a random mark. A map feature. A mill pond? A culvert? A cul-de-sac? Or a clock? If it was time, where did the notch point? Past midnight, toward the road south. He lay awake, whispering the options until the numbers blurred. All of it pointed to one truth. She wasn't simply helping a starving soldier live another day. She was running an operation, small, local, built out of courage and scraps, but an operation nonetheless. And if she was a runner, someone else expected her return. Someone else counted on her thread to stitch two halves of a broken land, which led to a chilling thought he couldn't shake. If they caught her, would they interrogate the camp to find who she'd aided? Would he become a lever to pry names from her? The guilt settled on him like fresh snow, soft, quiet, suffocating. Yet he kept going to the fence. So did she. This is how war forces impossible choices. Love, stripped of romance, becomes logistics. Hope turns into a schedule, and trust compresses to a glance and a ribbon you pray to see again. One evening, after a day of wind that scoured the yard clean of footprints, she arrived with nothing in her hands. She didn't kneel. She didn't push anything through. She simply looked at him, then traced the letter E once more, but this time added a short line beneath it, like underlining a fact. Then she pointed again to the south road, clenched her fist, and opened it. Soon. Soon what? Soon safety? Soon closure? Soon fire? When she backed into the trees, Leon felt the wire vibrate in a gust and heard its low metallic hum. It sounded like a chord about to resolve, the moment before a hymn finds its final note. The question lodged in his chest was simple and impossible. When soon finally came, would it open a path or a trap? And if a door did appear, could a starving man step through it fast enough to matter? War collapses slowly at first, then all at once. The first sign wasn't gunfire or orders. It was tension, the kind that spreads invisibly, like a smell before a storm. Guards spoke in low bursts, clipped sentences, always glancing over shoulders. Supply wagons arrived half empty. Radio operators stayed inside longer than usual and came out pale. The Reich, once loud with certainty, had begun to whisper. The prisoners felt it in their bones before anyone said a word. Oppressors don't grow nervous when they are winning. And yet, in that tightening atmosphere, E kept coming. She moved differently now. Faster steps, sharper corners, urgency replacing caution. Some nights she didn't kneel. She tossed a bundle and vanished without waiting to see if it landed. Other nights, she hid longer than usual, watching the fence as if waiting for a signal he hadn't yet learned to send back. Then came the first sound of the outside world penetrating the camp. Distant thunder that wasn't thunder at all. Bombing. Allied shells hammering the industrial belt to the west. The earth trembled with a faint shiver, like a colossal animal breathing in its sleep. With each strike, hope inched closer, but so did panic. Desperate empires do not loosen their grip. They tighten it until bone splinters. The guards began taking names. Roll calls doubled. Men were moved from barracks with no explanation. A rumor drifted across the yard like smoke. Prisoners weren't being transferred anymore. They were being erased to hide evidence. That was the shape of the ending no one dared speak aloud. He seemed to know something Leon didn't. On a windless night, she pressed another cloth scrap through the wire, but this one wasn't stitched with symbols. It was scratched with charcoal. One word. Soon. Not in German. Not in Polish. In the only language that made the message unambiguous. Survival. Soon what? Soon when? Soon for whom? The ambiguity was a blade. Hope is sharpest when it cuts both ways. Leon tried to question her the next night, mouthing words silently, pleading for clarity. She stared back, steady, unreadable, like someone who already knew time was collapsing behind her. Then she shook her head, pinched two fingers together, small window. Whatever soon was, it wouldn't linger. That same week, a prisoner disappeared from Leon's barracks. No that did. No screams this time. Just missing at dawn. Beds didn't empty unless someone wanted them empty. A camp is built like a throat. It swallows. The following night, he didn't appear. He waited until frost iced his lashes. Nothing. The yard stayed still. The birch line stayed black. The wire felt dead beneath his hands. That absence was worse than hunger. He told himself she was delayed, or watched, or worn away. But at the back of his mind sat a colder thought. They caught her. When she finally returned, near midnight 2 days later, her hood was missing and her hair was matted as if she'd been dragged. No banded. Not even. Just her fingers shaking slightly, gripping the wire like a drowning woman gripping a dock. She mouthed a word he couldn't decipher, looked over her shoulder, and fled. Whatever she was racing against, it wasn't distance. It was time. The next afternoon, a different rumor spread, this one in hushed, terrified currents, an evacuation order. Some camps were being cleared ahead of advancing troops, not liberated. Cleared, as in emptied. Permanently, not logistically. No one could confirm it, but fear doesn't wait for confirmation. That evening, the guards carried crates of kerosene behind the sheds. Then everything sharpened. Colors, sounds, the cold sting of wind. Mortality does that. It makes sensation vivid, as if the world wants you to remember it right before it takes you away. When night fell, Leon returned to the fence. No food this time. No coudit placement. Instead, something stranger. She stepped close enough that he could see she had been crying, and she pressed her hand flat to the wire. A farewell. Then she lifted the hem of her sleeve for just a second. A mark, not a prisoner tattoo. A partisan signal, burned in, small, deliberate. She was not improvising kindness. She was on mission, and missions have deadlines. She pointed to the south again, but this time her gesture was frantic. Be ready. Then she mouthed two fragments he understood only from shape, not voice. Before dawn. Escape? Sabotage? Liquidation? The same gesture can mean run toward freedom or run before they kill you. Which version would dawn bring? He went to sleep that night with his hands still shaking, eyes open toward the rafters, waiting for footsteps, engines, commands. Anything to reveal which future was coming. What is more terrifying than death? Not knowing whether you belong to the list of survivors or the list of evidence to be erased. The night did not begin with shouting. It began with silence, the heavy, unnatural kind that wraps a place like a shroud. No dogs, no Indians, no boots on gravel, just a stillness that felt staged, like the camp itself was holding its breath before a verdict. Then a whistle. One blast. Short, sharp, final. Doors slammed open. Guards spilled into the yard with rifles and torches. The kind of torches used not for light, but for burning. Prisoners were herded out in thick clusters, shoved forward with rifle butts, no roll call, no counting, just removal. Fast, brutal, panicked. This wasn't a transfer. This was disappearance. Leon had dreamed of the camp gates opening for rescue. Instead, they were opening for erasure. He searched the tree-line with every step, his ribs screaming from elbows, eyes stinging from smoke. Nothing. No sado. No oath. No girl. The line of prisoners was funneling toward trucks, not trains. Trucks meant secrecy. Trucks left no paperwork. The guards shouted in German too fast for weak minds to track. Hintererei. Schneller. Los. Hurry. Move. Now. Men stumbled forward in blind obedience. Leon twisted for one more look at the birches. Still nothing. Not until the fog moved. At first, he thought it was just smoke curling across the road. Then it thinned, and a silhouette broke from the tree-line. Small. Fast. Running. Her. Not crawling. Not sneaking. Running. Straight toward the fence. Toward him. Something tore through him. Instinct older than reason. He stepped out of line, earning a crack of a rifle but across his back, but he didn't feel it. His eyes were locked on her. She was waving something. Cloth? Rope? No. The blue ribbon. The signal. The door. The soon she had promised. She wasn't fleeing from the camp. She was racing to it. Before he could piece together why, a single gunshot punched the air. She jerked mid-stride. The ribbon flew from her fingers, spiraling upward like a wounded bird. She fell behind the low embankment, out of sight. No scream, no movement, just the echo of the shot, bouncing off metal and bone. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Then time came roaring back. Shouts, commands, prisoners shoved upward into trucks. The ribbon landed inches from a wire, close enough to see, too far to reach. Leon strained against the grip of men around him, trying to see if she rose. She didn't. Another torch was lit. Not for her, for the huts. Flames caught dry timber with a roar, heat spilling outward as if to erase the camp before dawn, exactly as she warned. She hadn't come to escape with him. She had come to finish something, warn him, reach him, give him a chance to run before the killing started. And now she lay somewhere beyond the ditch, a body the guards would never report and the world would never count. But when trucks began to pull forward, something didn't fit. If she was dead, why did two guards run past her fall point, further into the tree-line, scanning, shouting as if they expected more? Leon realized with a jolt. They weren't chasing a trespasser. They were afraid of what she brought. She wasn't just delivering hope. She was delivering information. She wasn't a smuggler of food. She was a smuggler of routes. She hadn't been running toward him. She'd been running toward whatever final drop she hadn't made yet. The guards didn't shoot her because she helped a prisoner. They shot her because she carried something they could not let reach the resistance. That reframed everything. The coded placements. The directional signals. The urgency. She wasn't saving Leon by accident. She was using herself as a human bridge through enemy fortifications. The wire wasn't a boundary in her story. It was a relay point. And now the bridge had been severed. The trucks lurched forward. The camp gates opened. Leon was jolted off his feet as the vehicle jerked down the rutted road. The smoke behind him blotted out the barracks, the fence, the ditch, and whatever lay inside it. No record, no witness, no burial. The girl through the wire had become what war creates when courage dies undocumented. A silence too heavy for history to carry. But a single question pinned itself beneath Leon's ribs like shrapnel. What if she wasn't dead? What if she had crawled away unseen? What if she had been dragged, interrogated, hidden? What if the reason no record of her exists is because someone needed her to vanish on purpose? Because that night didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the opening of a door that no one saw, except the two people who could no longer walk through it. And long after liberation, Leon would return to that patch of dirt and birch and wire, searching for proof she existed. He found none, but he never stopped asking the question, is a life gone if history never admits it was there? Liberation came weeks later, not as triumph, but as exhaustion. The guards fled before the Allies ever reached the gates. When soldiers finally entered, they found bodies, survivors, ashes, and silence thick enough to drown in. The world called it freedom. For Leon, it felt like stepping outside of gravity and discovering his legs didn't know how to belong to ground anymore. Most prisoners asked for food. Some asked for water. Leon asked for a map, not of cities, of trees. He returned to the birch line like a homing instinct. Others searched for lost family. He searched for one face, a girl whose entire existence had been contained within a sliver of moonlit space between two worlds. The snow had melted by then, washing away footprints and blood. There was no ribbon, no fabric, no trace. He searched the embankment, the ditch, the road. If she died there, the earth had swallowed her gently and without witness. And this was the first time he understood the scale of her secret life. If she was a courier, the resistance would have wiped her identity immediately to protect the chain. A courier isn't a person. A courier is a junction. If the line is compromised, the junction disappears. Exactly as she had. But Leon could not let disappearance be the final word. After his recovery, he joined relief workers cataloging displaced civilians. Then archives. Then parish rosters. He combed lists in Polish, German, Czech, anything containing the letter E. So many E's. So many vanished girls. He found stories of runners shot in orchards. Girls burned with safe houses. Women who smuggled children through sewers. Not one matched her. Not one had the right face. Not one had left a blue ribbon at a barbed wire fence. In interviews recorded years later, Leon's voice breaks only once, describing that first scrap of bread. Not the hunger, the hand that delivered it. He said, "I was already dead. She gave me back the knowledge that I was still counted among the living." For decades, he carried two questions. Was she trying to save me? Or was I just the proof someone on the outside needed that prisoners still lived here? And the heavier one, did she die for me, or did she die for something far bigger than me? Historians would later publish theories. One archivist believed she was part of a microcell used to track troop movement along the Baltic corridor. Another suggested she may have been relaying coordinates for an ambush on a supply column. One fragment from a local oral history mentioned a ghost girl who fed the fence, but no name, no fate, only myth. That is the strangest part of this story. She may have shaped the survival of dozens, maybe hundreds, and yet no stone bears her surname. Anonymous heroism is not the absence of legacy. It is legacy stripped of ownership. Years later, Leon married, built a quiet life, raised children. But every winter, on the week the camp fell silent, he walked alone to a forest near his home and tied a small blue ribbon to a branch. No words, no ceremony, just remembrance. To everyone else, it looked like a scrap of fabric. To him, it was proof a ghost had once been real. Late in life, a historian asked him whether he believed she truly died that night or got away. Leon didn't answer with certainty. He answered with longing. If she died so someone else could live. If she lived, history will never allow us to know. In either case, she is gone by design. Because disappearing is a tactic. And sometimes, disappearing is the last shield a hero owns. There is a line rarely spoken in war history textbooks. Some lives are not meant to be remembered by name, but by consequence. She was consequence wrapped in silence. A life erased not by cruelty, but by strategy. Leon died with one unfulfilled wish, to speak her real name out loud, just once. Not for himself, for the world. Instead, he left only testimony of her existence. Thin, fragile, but undeniable, like a ribbon on frozen wire fluttering against wind. Which leaves us with the final, unsettling question his story hands to the future. How many lives were saved by people history erased? And if we never learn their names, do we honor them any less? Or is remembrance itself a form of rescue? Some heroes leave medals. Others leave nothing but a memory pressed into a single survivor. And that must be enough. If you want more World War II stories like this, built from silence and devotion, stay with us. Another forgotten life waits in the next episode. Someone history tried to bury.